All right, let's get to players to avoid. We got Sam Darnold tonight. This is for Heath. Sam Darnold tonight against the Rams. Justin Jefferson at the Giants. So sad. And Dalton Kincaid at Cleveland.
Yeah, I think I've been kind of too low at times on Sam Darnold, but sometimes right because I was too low on Sam Darnold. It's been a very low volume, high efficiency attack. I do not like this matchup for him against the Rams, and I do not think with the weather, it sounds like it's going to be terrible at the start and then maybe improving as the game goes on, but they've got like a windstorm up there or something, which we'll have to check that closer to the start of the game. But you should stay away from Sam Darnold, regardless of how the weather is, especially if it's bad. Justin Jefferson, and I want to look this up and make sure that I've still got it right. He has 3 straight games below 25 receiving yards. First off, he'd never had a streak like that in his entire career, even his rookie year when he wasn't playing very much at the start of the year. His very first game, he had 26 receiving yards. He had not, before this stretch, when he went 4, 11, 22, the last time that Justin Jefferson had fewer than 25 receiving yards in a game was January 1st of 2023. Like, he almost went the entirety of 2023, 2024, and 2025 without hitting this mark, and now it's 3 weeks in a row. I don't really understand, like, watching them, why he and JJ McCarthy are just never quite on the same page. And he seems like it's kind of like, I think it was Roma Dunze last year with Caleb Williams, that Caleb Williams' off-target rate was just so much higher whenever he was throwing to Roma Dunze. That seems to be the case here. I can't, if I somehow survive with Jefferson on my team, I can't trust him now. And I don't want to trust Dalton Kincaid. He has the ability to catch a pass and break a couple tackles and give us a big gain or score a touchdown, but I think this is probably a very run-heavy game for the Bills against the Browns.
All right, and Jamey's 3 players that he wants to avoid. The first one's really interesting because I get it. Jackson Dart against Minnesota. We'll talk about this more tomorrow, but Minnesota's pretty injured now. They just put a starting safety on IR, starting edge rusher out for the season. So you got Dart against the Vikings, Ashton Genty at Houston, and Brian Thomas Jr. at Denver.
Lamar Jackson, Caleb Williams, Jordan Love, Sam Darnold, Jaden Daniels, Dak Prescott. They felt all of those quarterbacks, Minnesota, in a row to 18.6 fantasy points or less. And Dart has been great. He's got one game under 19.5 fantasy points, 19.6 fantasy points. And that was against New England in week 13, first game off the concussion. So it's very difficult to get away from Dart if you've been starting him. But Minnesota, they've been banged up at times during the stretch too. Maybe not to this extent, but I don't know. This just Brian Flores is putting on a clinic right now against opposing quarterbacks. The only one of that stretch that's done well against them in terms of yardage was Dak Prescott to go over 200 yards. Like, they've just been amazing. 1 touchdown in the last 6 games allowed to opposing quarterbacks. So, and if you're counting on his rushing, they're 8th best in terms of fewest rushing yards allowed to opposing quarterbacks. So if they're going to limit his rushing and limit his passing, I don't know. That doesn't sound like a great quarterback to me in a matchup. Ashton Genty's just been clearly struggling the last 2 weeks, but he's got 1 touchdown. It was on a reception since week 10. His last 3 games, I believe it is. Let me have it in front of me. His last 3 games have been 30 yards rushing or less, if I'm not mistaken. 35 rushing yards or less in 3 games in a row. And this Houston defense is obviously fantastic. I know they're missing one of their defensive linemen, but number 7 in fewest fantasy points allowed to opposing running backs. And then in the case of Brian Thomas, you're talking about still taking on Denver. They allow the fewest touchdowns to opposing wide receivers at 5. It was my argument against Christian Watson last week because they only had allowed 5 receiving touchdowns to wide receivers last week. That number stayed the same because no receiver caught a touchdown against the Packers. So I know Thomas looked much better last week. He's looked much better the last 2 weeks. This is not the matchup. You don't trust him.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what they do with Surtain in this game because Parker Washington played last week and Jacoby Myers was almost exclusively on the outside, 15% slot rate. So I think that's kind of know what the Jaguars are now. They got 2 outside receivers. What does Surtain do? I'm thinking probably does not shadow anyone.